First of all, thank you again very much for this opportunity. We hope that you like our ideas, but thank you for the learning opportunity, because for us it means a lot. Just so you can put names on the faces, I don't know how well that sheet works. It's really hard to see in there. My name is Lucas. My team, Deanna, Samantha, and Juanita. So let's get this started.
Okay, so we wanted to give you a little bit of background information. Some of the groups have touched on it. We've been working with you guys for 3 months now, and we wanted to identify the weaknesses within the Mazda application and then come up with actionable solutions for you. So we began by taking an in-depth look into the industry. From there, we learned that the consumers they want something, they want instant gratification, and they want it now, they want it fast, they want it simple, convenient for them. They also expect to be in control of the sales situation, which we thought was something that we weren't sure of. But at the same time, they wanted a balance of the salesperson knowing more than them. They wanted to be in control, but they wanted the salesperson to be in control. We also found that the global consumer industry is being swept with mobile technology, and that for you guys being a first mover and taking that technology into your dealerships was definitely a smart move. The next step, we conducted primary research during the Bentley University open house. We took advantage of having enough people on this campus actually in this room. We conducted focus groups and an online survey. And from that, we learned that the most commonly requested feature from consumers was financial information on the app, as well as we thought the test drive feature was maybe lacking some interactive media. From there, we went on to pose as mystery shoppers at local dealerships, and we learned that usability was actually an issue. We thought that using the app was the goal would be to break the barrier between the salesperson and the consumer, but in this case, we actually saw that it was still a barrier. And then lastly, we took a hands-on approach and performed one-on-one interviews with general managers, sales managers, and salespeople. From there, we learned their opinions of the iPad and followed up this research by releasing a nationwide online survey to over 2,000 salesmen. We received 246 responses, and our finding, analysis, and recommendations are direct derivatives of these responses.
Okay, so after looking through the data that we collected by running crosstabs and descriptive statistics, we kind of came up with the most significant statistics that we found. There was definitely a positive impression on the app overall, increasing customer satisfaction. The app is definitely a great customer usability source, and that's the thing. The app is what's significant here. What we need to talk about is this the right way to deliver it? We found that 78% of the respondents agreed agreed strongly that the iPad app helps customers stay occupied during downtime. And of those who used the iPad during the sales process, because some people said that they never used the iPad during the sales process, but of those who did, which was 81% of respondents, 64% of those put the iPad in the customer's hands. And of this 64%, 91% said that it was helpful during downtime, 71% agreed or strongly agreed that it improved customer experience. And the most important statistic that we found was 71% of these people who put the iPad in the customer's hands agreed or strongly agreed that it has increased their effectiveness in selling automobiles to the customer, so it's actually increased their sales. And whereas only 8% disagreed or strongly disagreed, and the other 21% were indifferent. And we also found that the most significant barriers to usage were internet connection and not being comfortable using the tablet. So obviously internet connection is kind of out of our scope, but obviously routers, putting more routers or more powerful routers around the dealership would help with that situation. And I know you guys had touched upon, or you had asked another group if there was a relationship between how often they use iPad and how long they had been at the dealership. And I just had looked back at the crosstabs that I ran, because I actually ran that crosstab, and we didn't find that there were significant enough statistics that correlated those two. And in fact, the majority of them use the iPad between 25% and 50% of the time. There was nothing very high percent that used it between people that were there for a couple of years, people that were there for 15 years. There wasn't a significant. And we just found that very few use it 100% of the time here. So what we are really trying to say here is that the the app is awesome. The app is great, and you guys designed it very well, but we just need a question, is this the correct interface to use with the customer in terms of interacting with it, and since they put it in the customer's hands so much, what we need to do?
So what Samantha says is very important. In terms that sometimes we take an approach towards this project as the iPad app. And we can't take this approach because we need to draw the line between the actual application, which is the software, what is inside the iPad, and the iPad itself, the tool that we use to deliver this information. So most of the research, let's say, and most of the value that is added in the process is in the application itself. It's in the information that is provided in the software, let's call it. The iPad is just the tool we chose. So of course, most of the weight, let's say, is carried by the application, right? But then, after thinking about it, the iPad does add the weight in the sense of it's cool. It's a cool technology. And we want to have cool technology because we want to reflect that cool technology equals the cool technology in Mazda. That's like the background thing that is around this. So we need to analyze these two, and we chose, instead of taking let's say the software approach, which we received great feedback from, was to actually analyze the tool that we deliver this application with. So we started to look at the interface and the user experience issues faced by delivering this great application through an iPad. So let's start by saying that the iPad was obviously intended for individual use. The size, the way you handle it, the way you touch it, the glass screen is designed to be seen from one single angle, and it's not a tool to share, let's say. Personally, I've been involved in 2 retail experiences where they have used an iPad, and it just gets awkward. Even though the information that the application and their iPad provided was great, and it did solve my issues, then when I wanted to see it, there's a change of hands, I pass it around, pass it back to me, who has the iPad in their hands? Now research shows in our past survey that actually when consumers have the iPad in their hands, when the salesman give it to them, it yields more positive results in the sales experience. But then again, why do we spend all this time training the salesman to have perfect use of the application when they're not going to have the iPad in hand, and it's going to be an inexperienced consumer using the application? So with this being said, we put all the options in the table, going back again to computers, using different tablets, using different devices, in which is the most efficient way to deliver this application and this information to consumers at the dealership. After many options, some ranging up to like tens of thousands of dollars, which is obviously, I believe, not feasible to include in every dealership around the country, we came up with this one device. And although it doesn't have to be this device, it is the idea. And it's a complete overhaul, let's say, of calling this the iPad project, but rather the application in a cool technological way where consumers and salespeople can interact both at the same time. So the Sony Vaio Tab 20 is just about to be released. It is a 20-inch tablet, super powerful, you can carry around, it's mobile, and it is multi-touch point, designed that if you fold the flap, you can lay it flat on the table, and it's big enough for more than one person to be used, as you can see on the picture. So you can lay it flat on the table, and multiple consumers can touch and interact with the application easily. But then again, it can be used for even more things and make it even more cost efficient. You just pull the flap, put a Bluetooth mouse and a Bluetooth keyboard, and there you go. There you have a computer for your salesman in each dealership. So the computer they use for whatever they use when they're using a computer, when the consumer comes, pull the flap down, lay it down on the table, and it's a 20-inch multi-touch tablet that consumers and the salespeople can interact. So here we have the awesome app in a tool that can be delivered efficiently and everyone can interact.
Just to add on that, I actually found a statistic that one of the highest things that the salespeople said that they would like on the application was customer information entry. So the keyboard would also help with that as well.
So what's going to happen with the iPads? I believe most of you are going to ask me this question since Mazda has already done a big investment on this. But we have come with several alternatives for you to consider if you decide to implement the other technology. First alternative would be selling the iPads if Mazda considered that it's no longer doesn't add value anymore. The second alternative is creating this iPad as a kiosk next to the cars that are being exhibited at the trade show. And the third alternative is creating a proprietary sales of point system, which Mazda Mercedes-Benz is actually doing with the MB Advantage right now. So based on our analysis, we consider that the best option would be doing the sales of point system, which integrates sales and finance at the same time. We consider that if we want to diminish the chances that consumers would get cold feet at the end of the process, the faster we close the deal, the better. So it's personal research we've done. We concluded that when customers are inside the car, they have emotions toward the car. They're feeling all of this, like the rush, the energy, the positive feelings toward the car. If the salesperson is able to close the deal at this point in time, you're more likely for customers to have like second thoughts about like really purchasing the car or not. So it would better if we can close the deal immediately, as soon like the fastest as possible.
So pretty much, it's an iPad overhaul. But we believe that, like, again, like we're actually praising the app that we saw to say it is a great tool. But then again, we divided this line, and instead of focusing on how we can improve the app and how to we chose in how we can deliver this app. How can we make this awesome thing even more awesome and even more effective? So thank you for listening, and we're open for questions now.
Guys, I'll tell you, team overhaul. I like the idea.
A little bit different.
He changed the name the name changer at MazdaUSA.com.
I'm a little different. I like to shop with my wives and my wife. Sorry about that. Joe will talk later.
We'll edit that out of the video.
But great idea. I mean, honestly, again, out of the box stuff. Maybe the iPad isn't the best tool or method to deliver our information. I loved it. I love the idea, setting aside the cost, but it's a wow moment for me. It's like the light bulb comes on. It was like, that's cool. That's a great, great way to bring the customer into the fold, where both customer and sales consultant are kind of interacting together. So for me, that was a wow moment. I love the idea. It's a takeoff point. So great stuff.
Mine starts with a question. The TAP 20, when is that out? Or is that out now?
I believe it's now, if you actually go to like the Sony stores, and if those that are still around and haven't closed down, you can actually see it, and like people have actually reviewed it. There's reviews out there.
But they're not for sale yet.
I actually believe you can. Can you order them right now from the Sony website?
Well, the reason I ask is because every time I've asked myself the question, is that device going to work with IMDCS, which is our name for the iPad app? Is it going to work? Well, most often the answer is yes. I don't think we set out to design this tool necessarily to work with all the others, but because they are such comparable technologies, they happen to work. Samsung, you could name many different brands, and I've had guys that go out and buy their own. Because obviously the iPad is X amount of dollars, and there's others out there for half the money. And I've been finding out, by accident along the way, that these other devices do work. I think we need to set a goal, and I'll give this as my recommendation, to make sure that they do operate with these other devices. Because one of the things that's been challenging is when this launched, it was a $700 device that a dealer had to purchase and kind of feel comfortable with not having to just walk away one day and grow legs. So, that TAP 20 guy, I'm real interested in that. Like Brian said, that was, I didn't even know that, and I'm a Sony guy back in the day, but I didn't know that device was coming out with such a large screen. I think that actually, if each dealer had one of those,
actually just
I think we could make some stuff happen with that.
To add to the umbrella of this is just one possibility, but this, let's say, type of computing devices with huge touch screens, let's call it, are massively being produced right now because of the Windows 8 operating software, which is touch. So
Yeah.
like, these are going to be everywhere. It's just a matter of
Laptops
time.
are going touchscreen. I mean, they're in the market for this Christmas, I believe.
Yeah, the tables are, I've been to the Microsoft Lab
Yeah,
in New
there's-
York City, you know, I've been inside there and gone through the stuff with them, and the tables that are touch tables and stuff, that's where you got, what you were talking about with the higher cost products.
7,500 we quoted.
Or
But let me,
Microsoft
so,
tables.
but let me put it in context for you. If you've been to my dealership, you've seen that big stand where the car sits on it, and it's got a fan in the back. I call it like the swamp boat. So Mazda made me buy the swamp boat. That was $24,000 for a swamp boat that doesn't do anything except, doesn't even, to me, it's lost the cool look to it too, as a matter of fact.
Ambiance.
Yeah. What is that? The customer goes up there, they're trying to open the door to look at the car, and then the door hits the rail on the outside. You're like, oh. So at the end of the day, the reason I brought that up is because money is being spent to have that look, feel, and everything in a dealership. If we could properly get the right people involved in Mazda design and in the design of our dealerships, we would spend the money on, instead of a swamp boat that takes up half of my small showroom, we would spend the money on tabletops and stuff. 75 grand a throw would mean nothing, because we'd be saving, I could buy 5 of those tables for where that thing cost. And you'd be able to, as long as we had a deal, we'd have to make a deal directly with the companies that, as the stuff got, dated, we'd be able to shift it, because you don't want a table there in 3 years that looks like a, it looks like a relic. You'd want to be able to shift it up. So there's different ways, whether leasing or approaching that, then it wouldn't be 5 grand. Then we would be paying less for it, and then switching it out and staying current. But the point you're making is, look, there's more than one person that comes in on most of these things. And an iPad, although that works, man, you can come up with the best content, and you can figure out the best delivery, the best videos, you can help. But your delivery mechanism is flawed in and of itself. And that's my takeaway from yours. If you want to really just open up your mind a little bit, take the information from the other guys on changes, but your delivery mechanism, after you make those changes and get better, inherently is still flawed. That's what you're saying, So one thing we can do is, we talked about this the other day, is I can use Apple TV for $100.
Yep.
I can go over to flat screens at the dealership, and then I could use the iPad and have a family watch as I show them something.
I have a dealer who spent $2,600 putting in a 60-inch television with an Apple TV, and on Saturday afternoons, that's what he's got playing on there. Is he's got these movies playing, and it's iPad on this large wall, right? It used to be an accessories display for the dealership, but that's just one
Use the
example.
app on there.
He can use the app on there. It works phenomenal, because it's basically just broadcasting this screen to another device. And his whole thing with doing that was, this is a one-person device. That was the reason he did it, was because, Dan, I just don't think that husband and wife can kind of get in on this together.
What other stuff did you see? Like I said, this one's $999, and I liked your thought process, because we use Chase Bank as our bank for Mazda. So Chase Bank is a big bank, and we could always go to Chase Bank and say, hey, listen, we'd like to put the information on the iPad for a customer and have it fed to DealerTrack. DealerTrack is where they take all your information and they submit your credit app to multiple banks. It's a software that we use at dealerships. So we could shift that use and say, okay, listen here, it's great, you're going to get the card. I'm just going to leave you with this iPad. You can fill out the credit app right there. And then that's where, there are other uses we can have for them. But what other technology did you look at? You said the 5 and 7,500.
We also looked at the other, we had 3 alternatives. So we analyzed the interface of the iPad, then the Microsoft, and like the large tables. This was like, our main focus was the large tables, but when we started looking into it, we realized like the cost was way too much, between $7,500 or $800 and more, and we were like, a dealership is not even considering a table per salesperson. So we were like, we have to consider a third alternative that's more price viable, and this is when we found the alternative we presented.
Did you look at any, like the new devices that are coming out? Like I know Dell's got a convertible, you know, it's laptop and tablet. The Lenovo, I think, has one out now as well. I mean, there's a myriad of convertibles where you can like literally flip the screen and it can be used as both.
We looked at plenty of devices, but rather than like, we used a specific name, a specific device, just to like, that you can actually like look into that and see like what we kind of mean, but it's more like the concept. Yeah, it's a large tablet what we're trying to get into. Just to chime in on like how we got to these like final options, I remember you talking about the Apple TV and the idea of connecting the iPad and then projecting on a large screen, and that solves. The reason why we didn't include that is because that solves half of the problem. In the survey, we actually one of the key things is that it is more efficient when consumers have it in their hands, and the consumer likes to have a certain control. Let's say they like to like interact and not to be shown. And again, with the Apple TV, the user interface, like they can now see it. Now everyone can properly see it, but they still cannot interact. So that is the only flaw. You still have like the small screen where one person is holding it and showing the rest of the people. While with the large tablet, you're not only seeing it, but you can also touch, oh, let me see this, let me see that. You know, so like again, it has that hands-on experience from both parties.
And that meets the criteria we found in our industry analysis that the consumer wants to be in charge. If you just put it on the screen and had the salesperson still in charge of the iPad, that would meet that criteria of the person feeling like they were in control of the situation.
Well, it's funny because you said it so perfect at the beginning, and I actually fired it down here. It says they wanted to be in control, but they wanted the salespeople to be in control.
That's
Right? So it's like you're sitting there going,
they want to balance. You
right.
basically have to trick them into thinking that they're in control when the salesperson actually still is.
yeah.
So.
You put a device like that in their hands and they're going to feel
And
a
they
little
feel
bit more in control,
Yep.
which kind of meets that.
Well,
And then they still want to be impressed with you having all this information. You feel, you know, credible and confident. So.
very interesting. I just liked your approach. I call these guys the contrarians, you know, because one of the meetings they go, I don't think you should even use the iPad. You know, they're like coming in just challenging. It was good. So the new name is Team what? Overhaul?
Team
Overhaul.
Team Overhaul, Team Out of the Box. Jeez, man.
Yeah,
You were here first week.
There's been change 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the presentation too. I appreciate the bravery on, you know, going very much against the grain on the things that we're doing. I think that we're learning a lot. You know, that's the biggest takeaway is that there's so many different approaches that we can look at. I mean, absolutely what the project is all about is how do we engage with the customer the best way, not necessarily married to anything that we're doing. It's obviously easier to go down a path that we're already investing in, but very much like the approach, so I like that. You know, a lot of good learnings. I mean, you know, we're learning to Brian on mobile wives, and we're learning Dan's a Sony guy, which I don't know what that is.
Used to be.
I never heard of a Sony guy. That's good. But yeah, I mean, thank you very much for that. I think that that's going to be an ever evolving challenge that we have is hardware. I mean, the feature car platform that Joe's talking about with the computers around, believe it or not, when we came up with that concept, that was cutting edge, and unfortunately, it's still there. And so I think that's the challenge that we are going to have to make sure that we continually address. Is every time we introduce new technology, new hardware in the dealerships, how do we maintain some refreshing or some sort of renewal process to that and staying ahead of it. So, yeah, really appreciate the presentation. I think that's major consideration, major takeaway. To Dan's point about the software being able to be used in other devices, absolutely true. As long as you're running Safari, you should be okay with other devices. The only thing is that we can't guarantee that the user interface will be the same. So we optimize it for the screen size.
Yeah, it's aspect ratio.
Right,
It's all about
exactly.
the aspect ratio.
It's all about the aspect ratio. That's exactly right. So you might have some things that are stretched or out of alignment, but otherwise it should work. So maybe that's another thing that we can look at is how do we, you know, I know that there's some software that you can use that adapts, so maybe we can look at that and see if there's other ways that we can play with that so it's a little more portable from device to device. So overall, you know, thank you very much again. I really appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.